Good afternoon, folks. We are up and running. Let me get everything switched over and loaded up. Let's do some drawing. All right, we got BGM. I'm running through the BGM playlist again. I need to keep an eye on the volume, make sure that's good. Red Dragon, I saw. Thanks for the resub. 9 months. The alert didn't go off because I had everything muted, so you might have seen a little pop-up, but there would have been no funny sound alert. But thank you. It's very kind. I don't know how you get that first. Oh, I see. It's for 9 months. 9 month subscribers, the first icon. Okay. Very cool. How are you doing, Red Dragon? How's your Wednesday going? My schedule seems all off this week because this is the first stream of the week so far. Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. Hopefully I didn't just mess up my Scarlet settings by hitting a knob. It looks like it's alright. Be careful with my volume. It has been a hot minute since we've worked on anything drawing-wise because the PC was out of commission for a bit. To that end, I don't know if working on this stuff is any more taxing than the gaming stuff we've been streaming lately. But I am going to kind of compulsively save a bit more than usual just because I don't want to lose my progress. Things have been stable, knock on wood, but I'm still kind of monitoring to make sure there are no problems with the machine. Oh, the Founders Badge, subscriber badge exclusive, available exclusively in the first 10 Prime or paid subscribers of affiliate channels in the first 25 Prime. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I honestly don't really keep track of who's been subbed for how long until I see the little reminder thing that pops up. So that's like a limited thing for the first group. That's cool. All right, so what are we going to be working on? Taking a page from where we left off before. Again, this was probably well over a month ago last time we worked on this. We're going to be continuing to brainstorm ideas for the upcoming Halloween project. And primarily, I want to deal with the faction-based characters and their ideas. I think it's still going to end up with me drawing these, so the closer we get everything honed in as far as ideas, the easier it'll be when I actually sit down and start working on this stuff for the concept work that's going to go into the release. And one thing that's new that has happened since the last time we talked about this project, I have finalized the tracks for it. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I know how many there are in the release. So based on what I've edited and recorded and put together, there are 14 tracks in the Halloween release. And so what that means is I need 14 character concepts that are going to be part of like the just splash art that shows up in the video. Kind of like we did for Titanium Forest, where each track is going to have like a specific character that pops in. I haven't figured out the layout yet because it's going to depend on how big they are and how many, like what they look like. Red Dragoness. I know both sides are meant to be covered, but are there any middle that aren't? So the short answer to that is, by covered you mean like the ideas, or do you mean physically covered, like their bodies like obscured? I'm assuming you mean the latter, with not being able to see like physical details. The short body cover, yeah. So both sides are completely covered, just in different ways. The Divine faction, which I still haven't settled on a name for, I gotta do that some point soon, are usually more obscured by like armor, and then the Natural Order is more obscured by more organic things, animal skulls, furs, plant parts, and whatnot. I see Snake's here. What's up, Snake? Welcome to the stream. How you doing on this Wednesday? And so to that end, like Red Dragon was hinting, what I want to start with, just as kind of a warm-up, is brainstorming some more ideas for the Divine faction's characters and kind of their function. I think, let me jump back through some of the previous iterations we were working on in previous streams. I had to remind myself I've not been in here since the last time I streamed this here on Twitch. This was one rough concept that we sketched out for the Natural Order. It's kind of more of a warrior, or maybe like a Templarish type character. We have, oh, here, let me jump on this layer here. We had things like the animal skulls. This looks more like a helmet, but it's supposed to be a mask. I think the rest of the details would have to be kind of roughed in a little bit. Snake says, I'm doing good. I played poker against a bunch of bird people and only lost 10 silver. Nice. I didn't know you played poker. I am absolutely terrible at poker. Not a huge fan of card games in general, but that does remind me, since you mentioned it, at some point I was gifted a copy of Balatro, and I'd like to sit down and try it out. I just have not had time, and I know it's a deep rabbit hole, so jumping in to completely lose hours and hours of my time has not been a good idea since I've been working on stuff this week, but I'm going to be jumping in at some point. And I'm sure I will report back with how that goes. I don't know if I'm going to stream it, but I'm thinking about it. Snake says, was it Sourlad who gifted it to you? I think so. If he did that to a bunch of our content creator peers, then I know who to blame. But yeah, I think it was Sourlad. Red Dragon asking me to give you ideas of the names. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get to the full sketches right away, but on pages like, where are we? We're down here. On here, I can write little notes if you have ideas for names. The Divine faction, it's going to be kind of like angelic-ish type names. I have been kind of coming up with some possibilities that takes, like the biblical angel names that everybody knows from like the Bible and Bible literature, and kind of trying to take a spin on that, but create something a little bit unique, because these aren't supposed to be like literal angels. They're just from like a celestial race, if that makes sense. But yeah, if you have ideas, I'll make notes here. That's what this page is for. Snake says, to explain better, I do this kind of role-play game with a couple other people I know. And one of the games is set in the time I was reincarnated as a slime. Oh, basically my character got isekai. He's a greaser from the 50s. Is this the same role-playing game that you're doing with Dirt Bones, or is that D&D? I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember which is which. Different game. All right, gotcha. That's cool. So in this particular setting, you're playing poker with bird people, huh? All right. We're gonna start off with some more head sketches here. These particular ones are the easiest for me to run through with ideas. And I'm thinking we're gonna need, for this particular faction, their appearance doesn't necessarily need to dictate their function. So they're all kind of armored celestial type creatures, but they have kind of grotesque elements. So unlike the really straightforward kind of holy angelic armor you might see in certain media, these ones are meant to have a lot of those themes but look a lot more kind of gross, like biblically accurate angel in armor form, if that makes sense. It's why a lot of them have all eyes everywhere. And the color paletting would definitely match that with a lot of like metallic colors, bright like golds, silvers, and whites, quote unquote, like pure tone colors. Okay, you could ping me on Discord. I see. What did you send me, Red Dragon? Okay, I see you got some ideas for the name of the faction itself. Cool. Thanks for coming up with those. We'll definitely take those into consideration. Because what I want to do, I might change my mind. I'm going back and forth on it. I think I like the idea of a word that is kind of a twist on like a holy angelic theme like you have there, but then combine that with something that designates a group. So like you would have the Celestians is one that you had here. So it would be like the Celestian Brotherhood, or that's just an example, or something that denotes the group. And so I'll tinker around with those ideas and see what I come up with. Hopefully by the time I talk about this project again, I'll have settled on something so that I can actually refer to this group accurately. Snake asked, will the faction have ranks? Yeah, that's another thing that I want to sort of flow into the concept development here. So not only just based on kind of role and ideas, it would be kind of like, would this be a lower level, like frontline infantry type of role, or would it be a higher commander type role? Stuff like that I want to factor in as well. All of the members of the Divine faction are meant to be like some sort of soldier or warrior type that would be in like an army, because their whole shtick is that they're invading the realm of the natural order to wipe them out. So it's not like they're sending diplomats or merchants or anything like that. They're sending an army. So all of their forces are going to be very warlike. Maybe we make this a little more aerodynamic looking. Like the idea of a kind of like a winged soldier, like airborne support, without it just being, hey, this person has angel wings coming out of their helmet. Snake also says, good news, Good news! I recently downloaded every season of the greatest isekai Futurama. I guess technically that does follow the same premise as isekai. That's a good show. I haven't seen all of the newer stuff that was done, but I really liked Futurama. To me, that show had a lot more kind of staying power in its humor compared to The Simpsons, even though The Simpsons are still around. That's probably a lot. How many episodes is that? If you have the entirety of it, probably 100 something episodes, more, less. Steak says, I don't think the Simpsons is going to be around much longer since Marge's actor passed away, and they said they wouldn't replace any of the crew. Is that true? Is that Nancy Cartwright? Did she die recently? I had not heard that. Nancy Cartwright was Bart. Who plays Marge? Marge is played by Julie Kavner. She's still alive. Are you talking about someone else on the cast? Oh, good lord. Jump back in this tab. Red Dragon's Dream. Drop a beat. Small mode. Fact. Hydrate and stretch. That's a lot of redeems. Okay, let's we'll do the beat first. Then we'll do small mode. Then we'll do the fact. You're gonna be getting the Garden Watch fact. And we'll make sure we get them all in order. Let me pause the BGM. And I see Snake redeemed Old Man Music recommendation. All right, we will get to that after. Let me make sure I get all your redeems in a row here. First, we'll do the beat. So let me grab my headphones. I'll put this tablet a little out of the way so I can see my keyboard. All right, what do we want to do? Also, just in case anyone was wondering, I've been lagging a little bit on uploading these little beat clips onto the main YouTube channel. I've been kind of picking and choosing the ones that I like to upload. There was one that Red Dragon, I think, redeemed from the Monster Hunter stream last weekend. That one's going to go up when I eventually get around to it. But I've been putting them into a collection here on the Twitch channel. I don't know if anyone ever looks at those or if anyone has ever looked at those, but the clips from the stream, whenever I grab the beats you folks asked me to make, they go into a thing here on the channel if you ever want to look at them, and then I download those and put them up on YouTube as well. But it's not every single one. I just kind of pick and choose ones here or there. So I need to go and upload the recent one from last stream. But it'll be up there eventually. All right. Yeah, I don't know if it's a feature most people use, Red Dragon. It's called Collections here on Twitch. I don't know if it's under videos or what, but I've been dumping everything in there so they're in one spot like a playlist. And then putting them on YouTube. Let's do something a little bit fast. Snake says, okay, I'm back. I guess I was wrong. Must be misremembering. I feel like even if that wasn't correct, The Simpsons should be on borrowed time. That show needs to end already. We could celebrate how great it was once it's done. Though I've heard the recent seasons have gotten a little bit better compared to like the huge slump. But still, the series has been on far too long. And no, Snake, I'm about to do the beat, Redeem. I'm going to do the beat, turn on small mode, do the fact, and then your old man music recommendations last. So no, you didn't miss it. All right, let's try to do something a little bit fast and see how that works. Let's do it. Red Dragon says, Raku the old man is slow. Hey, that's what happens if someone drops like 5 redeems at once. Can only do so much, but we'll get them. All right, let's do it. All right, let's turn on small mode. Grab the timer. Snake says, Raku, anytime you beatbox, it reminds me of that scene from Men in Black 2 with the beatbox alien. Yeah, that was the legendary late great Biz Markie of iconic hip-hop fame and big proponent in beatbox culture. He's one of the OGs from back in the day in the 80s. A legend. Rest in peace. And there goes my smoothie. I hope you folks are happy with yourselves. If I have to get up to fried chicken, the blood will be on your hands. Snake says we like being gremlins here. I would expect nothing less from people affiliated with Wazzy's crew. All right, next up, we've got fact. Fact, then recommendation, all right? So before we get to the recommendation, Snake, think about if you want me to cover a specific genre. And just like before, I'll put it in the chat, and then I will also put it in the Discord channel for the history of the recommendations. So think about it if you want a genre while I work on the fact, which is again Garden Watch update for you folks. So Garden Watch 2024, it is finally warm and consistently hot where I live for at least right now. Garden is doing well. My overall garden stock, I run through it from top to bottom. 2 basil plants, one of which is outside, one of which is inside. The outside one, not doing very well. It, despite my best efforts, is not liking being outside. Inside one, doing very well and is starting to outgrow its pot. I might have to replant it soon, but the inside one's doing quite well. Green onions, giant pot of green onions. They're pretty easy to take care of. They're doing pretty well. I need to harvest them and use them for something. Tomatoes. My tomato plant started as like a little couple, like 1.5 foot tall sprout plant. It is now like 3 feet tall almost. It is big. It is in a big pot and doing well. Already getting flowers. If the weather stays hot, then I'm going to get a butt ton of cherry tomatoes this year, which I'm very happy with. Next up, the habanero plant. That's new this year. Habanero plant is also doing well. I don't know when it's going to be big enough to actually develop fruit for the peppers, but it is growing pretty well. I pruned it, and now it is kind of shooting in all directions, but still growing upwards. It's not big, but it's growing well. Apparently those like hot weather. That's good. Next up, I have a spicy oregano plant. I've never grown oregano, but I picked up an oregano plant this year. It is also doing quite well. It is kind of a low bush-like plant. It doesn't grow up, it grows out. And it's growing pretty well in the medium-sized pot I put it in. So that one's doing well. Anything else? I think that's it. I have a lot of plants this year. I have more than last year. I think the outdoor basil is going to be a bust, so I'm going to start cutting it and maybe replanting it elsewhere. But overall, things are doing pretty well. Snake says we shouldn't call you the bee man anymore. We should call you the green man. Well, let's wait till after the harvest season is done. Just because everything looks good now doesn't mean it's all going to stay that way, but it is encouraging. All right, let me make sure I'm going down the list here. So old man music recommendations. Snake says, pretty easy, so something rock or even J-rock. Oh, J-rock. I had not thought about Japanese recommendations. Again, the rules for old man music is it's got to be more than 20 years or more in age. But considering I started listening to Japanese music I started listening to stuff from the mid to late 90s, but I started in like 2000. So I could cite anything that's before 2004 and still meet the criteria. I got one for like a rock song. Let me see what year it came out and make sure it's in line. Okay. What album was that? Oh, good. That's handy. 2000. All right. 4 years. 4 years in the clear. So I'll go over to YouTube to grab the video for it. And then I'll put that in the chat in Discord in the channel later. But Snake, your old man music recommendation, and it kills me that this song is more than 20 years old now, is L'Arc-en-Ciel, who's probably a band most people have heard of. But my favorite song from L'Arc-en-Ciel, this is back in 2000, it's Stay Away. So let me put that in the chat. Writing this band's name is always a pain in the rear because of all the little tildes that they have. And the video for this one's kind of interesting too. It's an unusual but fun video. Here, I'll just put it in there now since I had to look it up on YouTube anyway. Great band. I don't think they've been doing much lately since the lead singer Hyde was doing a lot of solo work. But yeah, that's a good one. I think I've done that every time I've gone to karaoke where they have Japanese music. It's a real fun song to sing. But yeah, I guess I didn't really specify that if you want to go genres, Japanese stuff's definitely on the table. I have a lot of recommendations from things going back to the 70s. So yeah, thanks for the redeem. All right, back to work. Let's take we can take off small. Yep, I got the timer. Everything should be back to normal. All right, so for this one, a helmet kind of reminds me of the Rocketeer a little bit, which I haven't seen that movie in a long time. That could work for like a winged cavalry or infantry type of unit. Again, to look at the requirements for the project, I need 7 characters from each faction. And I don't know if just based on what we're doing today, I'm going to have enough to choose from, but the idea is to just jot down ideas for as many potentials as possible, and then from there I'll work on actually sketching out full designs, because I haven't decided if I want to do it in drawing format like this, where it's drawn out, inked, colored, shaded, and everything, or if I want to do it in pixel form. At this point I haven't decided yet. I actually started creating the very first character, which I don't even know if might be this one in the top corner, but I did make it in pixel format already just to experiment around with that style, but I haven't quite decided yet. So we'll see. It's a little bit easier for me to do that, but I did that for Titanium Forest, so that's why I'm thinking about doing it fully drawn out this time. It's going to take a long time for me to do that. Oh, I got an idea. We need a heavy armor unit. Like a shield guard type. I don't know if you folks have ever played the first Dark Souls, but my immediate thought for like a heavy armored type of character would be Havel the Rock. Got in the stone armor and the giant dragon's fang that he uses. You fight him in one of the towers earlier on in the game, and he hits like a Mack truck, but he's kind of big and slow. I believe you get Havel's Ring, which ups your total load capacity so you can equip heavier gear. maybe something more like kind of defensive plating that's covering the face. Almost looks like a statue to me. But the idea would be like really heavy, rocky plates of armor and whatnot protecting the head, like a helm, something like that. Snake says, I'm done listening to the song and I think I'm going to enjoy it. It takes me a few listens to get addicted to it, kind of like what's happening with the ending song to Suicide Squad Isekai. That makes sense. L'Arc-en-Ciel is a really interesting and cool band. They've been around since the early 90s, I want to say. And their style of rock slash alt rock pop stuff spans a whole lot of different types of sounds. They're one of my favorites, probably top 10 bands in Japanese rock for me. But a lot of the members went on to do kind of like solo projects as well. Like the lead singer Hyde went off to do his own thing. The bassist Tetsu, he had his own solo stuff. The lead guitarist Ken, he did some solo stuff too. I highly recommend checking out their discography if you can. L'Arc-en-Ciel's great. And you've probably seen it. Just it pops up here or there in the community Discord, Snake. But I've talked a lot about Japanese rock because I've been hooked into that scene for a very long time. But if you ever want more recommendations of stuff that's in there, let me know. Between genres and styles and different time periods, especially on like the harder J rock visual K side, I listen to a lot of stuff. But not everything I listen to is, or have listened to is visual stuff. If that's not your deal either. I just had this idea to put the eyes kind of running around the perimeter of the mask here. One thing I think we talked about it before when we were doing the concept ideas for the angelic faction, the celestial faction. They're not necessarily people. They're some sort of biological race that, again, you can't see their features because they're covered in armor, but they're not like regular humans. They're more alien like, kind of like the natural order is a bit more bestial, animalistic. None of these are like regular quote unquote humans. I think that's a little bit boring, but I also like the fact that it's not clearly defined. They're humanoid, like they have human like shapes, but if you were to take off all the armor, they'd probably be like gross alien creatures, at least for this faction. Red Dragon says moss. Oh, that's a good idea. Like weathering to show. Actually, I'm gonna put here like moss. Just a note on this one, since it might be tough to show in the sketch, but kind of like moss patterns or like green stuff that shows age. Like the armor itself might look like it's crafted from very weathered ancient rock. I actually think I might have done this a little bit too narrow, too small, but that's okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's iterate on the idea of a heavy shield defensive unit for a couple here, since we haven't really done that so far. What I initially thought, and for those of you who've played Monster Hunter probably know what I'm talking about, I was initially thinking like the Baroth armor, which has these kind of like tall vertical portions on the helm on both genders styles. The female one looks more like a crown in most cases, but it looks kind of like a rook design, if that makes sense. So I was thinking about taking that idea and sort of adapting it here, kind of like a tree trunk almost, But it wouldn't be a tree shape because that's something the natural order might have more than anything else. So maybe more kind of like basalt formations almost. You can go a little bit more angular again, like the rock angle. We can do things like put like weathering and cracked patterns, make it look like it's again been around for a really long time. I didn't realize I didn't turn the BGM back on. Surprised you folks didn't mention it. It's been just dead silence and the sound of me mouth breathing into my mic. What we could do is we could add like the kind of decorative ponytail thing that some knight armor has. I don't know if this has an official name. It's not actually hair, but it's a decorative part of the helm itself. Red Dragon asks, because he's made of rock, will there be a tree? Yes. So at some point, maybe we can flip over to Natural Order and start doing some more sketches there later. There is a character that is sort of tree-like. Let me pull it up here. This is the second round. Where are we? Here we go. It has been a hot minute. This character down here in the corner, I think we talked a little bit about this one because I drew this one on stream, I think. I honestly don't remember. But this is kind of like a tree shaman type of character. The idea behind this one would be probably a character wearing a lot of like robes, like really flowing, obscuring robes, but things that are wrapped in roots with a lot of like the same type of growth you see on the mask itself, which is like tree roots right here. But it would be kind of like armor protecting the body and torso of the character. And the idea would be kind of like a earth mage or geomancer, but for plants. Like we were talking about before, similar with the mushroom idea, but instead of it being kind of like that one, I'm still kind of just trying to decide the function of. But for this particular one, it'd be like a mage that can manipulate trees and plants to some extent. And so you'd see a lot of those ideas on the outfit. That's actually one I have pretty clearly in mind what I want to do. I just haven't done it yet. So that could be a good counter to the one we're working on here, which is, you know, like rock versus just tree, like Red Dragon is saying. I'm realizing that I've started scaling up how much I'm doing these here. That's fine. It doesn't have to be exact. What's important is that we get the ideas. And for this one, I'm thinking almost looks like a mecha design, like an Ava or something. I'm thinking we put the eyes on the front, like right down the middle. Hard to tell which one I like more. I think I like the sort of front pattern on this one. Maybe the moss one, the moss one with the ponytail could be interesting. We just take this and put it right here. I feel like I could even adapt like this front part of the mask into a design for like a tower shield. Again, thinking of like Havel and someone who would be a really heavy unit would probably have some sort of tall great shield. I don't know how many of you folks have played popular RPG Raid Shadow Legends, but there's a boss in that game that has a tower shield that looks kind of like this. It's the Fire Knight. If this is the shield, it's got what pattern? It's got eyes like this and like a bunch of spikes and sharp bits everywhere. It's a really cool design. So maybe something like that, but instead of it being like a metallic forged shield, it'd be like a big rock, a big slab of rock that maybe has eyes or something set into it. That would be a kind of fun theming idea to mess around with for this particular type of character. Red Dragon says the first front and the second back. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. So like this portion right here, but combined with this portion right here. Red Dragon says Raid Shadow Legends, never heard of it. One day, just to troll you folks, I'm gonna just stream that for like 3 hours straight. And you'll be my captive audience. Alright, might have to make room on a new layer soon, and that's perfectly fine. Again, these don't have to be in any sort of order, just trying to make room and sketch ideas where we can fit them. What's another type of role in an army? So we have ideas for casters, a couple of like armored frontline soldiers types, including like a heavier type, a lighter type, an aerial type. Archers, yeah, archers. That's true, ranged. That is something we can definitely adapt. What's this? That looks like a bot. I've never seen this one before. Bye-bye. Get out of here. This is a bot-free zone. Okay. So an archer type design. One thing I was thinking, and you could tell me if you folks sort of are thinking something similar. This design up here, it's a little bit smaller than the others, just based on the scale. That one could function like an archer. It's got really kind of like a sleek design, doesn't look overly heavy. An archer's got to be able to move and be mobile, more speed-based than strength-based. But Red Dragon says wings wrapped. You mean like wings wrapped around the face or the head? That would be kind of a challenge to draw, but let's give it a try. Part of it is figuring out like a central point of where where they're coming from. You know, they're not just coming from nowhere. They've got to start at like a specific point. Could even add like a central anchor point here, so it looks like they're sort of swirling out. I know it's hard to tell just based on the way I'm roughing it in here, but this is supposed to be like feathered wings. Almost looks more like fire now, like a fire elemental, because you know you can't tell from the color. So the way I have it set up here against the side profile, they're kind of spreading out from this part on the side and wrapping all the way around. So if you were to look at it from the front, oh, it's gonna be really rough here, but it would look kind of like this. And so this point down here is where everything sort of starts. And I was thinking, yeah, like Red Dragon saying, it could be like a main eye that's sort of set in, and then all the points are coming out from here. We'll be a little bit careful, because I'm pretty sure if we get too close to having it look more like lines converging or spiraling into a central point, we're gonna get character Toby from Naruto, and I don't really want to get sued. Or I forget the final boss character when you get that reveal later, but like his mask looked kind of like this. Here's the eye hole, and it was like that. So I kind of get the vibe, but I think this idea has potential. It seems like it would be. I was thinking it'd be kind of a weird concept for an archer, but we can even add more eyes that are inset up between the sort of the wings themselves. So it's not just one down here. So that it's more like that. We have more of like ranger gear. One thing I want to look at some point, I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but do kind of more of a deep dive into weapon design. I think we've done it a bit on the previous streams. We've looked at kind of what like the different faction weapons would look like. I think at one point we were talking, actually maybe we didn't do that on stream. That might have been when I was talking with Pwops offline, and we had some ideas for some like the animal-based weapons the Natural Order would use. To that end, like the celestial divine weapons that this faction uses would probably be things that look very, again, metallic, probably a lot of eyes, very Soul Edge-esque, I think. That is something I want to do at some point. I don't know if we're going to get there today, but each of these characters is going to need to be armed to some extent. Snake says, I feel like they would use light weapons akin to laser guns and such. Definitely light-based weaponry, but not like literal guns. Probably caster weapons for things that use magical energy. So catalysts, but not like literal guns. I know you didn't mean like space laser guns and stuff like that, but you could probably adapt ideas. Yeah, things that would be able to cast like holy energy, light type stuff. All right, let's go to a new layer. Kind of organize the way we're drawing stuff. I want to iterate a bit on the ranger class idea more. Let's go on to a new one. if it was animated, this was kind of an idea I was kicking around. This project is not going to be animated, I don't think. But if these were animated characters that moved, for the ones where you can see like a lot of different eyes, they're not ornamental. They're either eyes that literally see, and or they would be eyes that move actively to form that function. So if you have like a weapon with a lot of eyes on it, they're not just painted on. It's not a decoration. It's literal eyes that like blink and or like jitter around. I think it'd be a really cool kind of creepy effect. Snake says, I feel like the faction would have a good range, but not too good at close range capability. I kind of thought the reverse for the angelic faction, because a lot of their weapons would be kind of your quote unquote standard melee type weapons for the combat. So a lot of like swords, spears, shields. We're looking at range, so that would be like archers or something like that, or ballista or arbalests. But the other faction seems like they would be more range using like magic. So what I mean by that is it might be more like summon type magic, or the ability to create things from a distance and manipulate them, kind of like homunculus type magic or things like that. I haven't really decided, Snake. I think you could easily incorporate aspects of both sort of styles into each. Like, you're gonna have casters on both sides, you're gonna have warriors on both sides, but how they behave would be a little more nuanced towards that faction. Again, the Natural Order is supposed to be more of like a druidic faction, if that makes sense. So very kind of like shamanistic, earth-based magic and imagery, and like animalistic that we talked about before. Haven't quite figured out if it's going to be like turning into animals so much, but inspired by animals. And that should be reflected in how they fight too, even if you're distinguishing between close range and long range. That's sort of the idea there. All right, let's key in on the idea of an archer. So we had kind of Red Dragon's idea of a bunch of wings. Let's go for kind of more of like the armored mask type approach and see what we can come up with. Want to be careful about imagery, since animal imagery is something that the Natural Order does more effectively, which is why the Celestial faction, the Angelic Hordes, they look like more alien, as opposed to this one looks like a bird, or this one looks like a wolf, or something like that. They're supposed to be more like alien and almost more Lovecraftian. That's kind of the idea I was going for there. I've got an idea I'm going to try and run with here. Snake says, when you said turning in animals, my brain went to the game Bloody Roar. Speaking of dead fighting games, I never really played Bloody Roar back in the day, but I remember kind of messing around with it a little bit. Kind of a unique idea. You had the cast could turn into different animals. I wonder how many people got fur-pilled by that game back in the day. But there hasn't been a new one of those in forever. It's been ages. The kind of idea that I was going for here, more armored, kind of smooth lined helmet with horns this time. But this part here is sort of the quote-unquote eye area that the character's seeing out of. So like we did on the other ones, the eyes would be in here like this. Let's go 4 this time. And I was thinking maybe we do something, I don't know what this is called, like that wrapped ponytail. Instead of the big billowy, like Nightmare from Soul Calibur-esque one, something like this. Stink says, I feel like the archers would have a face with a bunch of eyes to make it easier to estimate the difference between them and the target. That's a good point. What you're talking about is kind of like the way bugs have eyes arranged on their head so they can see all the way around them. Like jumping spiders, I think, have that. So they could see like 360 degrees around them and watch out for predators. Okay, let's take that idea for the next concept. I think I have an idea on how to work that in a way we haven't so far. This is good. You folks always bring good ideas to my concept brainstorming sessions. This is what I was thinking for an idea. The top has kind of got this almost barnacle ridge looking shape. But unlike the others where the eyes are kind of more on the front part of the face like that, I was thinking the eyes would be on the sides. Again, kind of thinking like a bug. But not in like an organized fashion. I think it's a little more interesting to have it be kind of more chaotic. I do think those would be better spaced out evenly on the top. Snake says you pick up a thing or two watching shows about masked heroes. I believe it. I would definitely expect, based on your area of expertise, that a lot of the theming and ideas would be stuff that you've seen. Which is good, because if I accidentally put together some ideas that are too close to something you might see on a show, you can tell me, hey, that's just like that one character on what show, and I can avoid getting sued. Because, as we all know, I have enough problems with people claiming my work on the music side that I don't really need it on the art side as well. I'm kind of curious to see for the upcoming Chill release next month if I run into the same problems, because I have run into that on, I think, the last 3. I'm trying to remember if I ran into that on Titanium Forest, but I did for Lost Kingdom, where someone claims my music after I upload it, and I have to wait for the dispute to get dropped after 30 days. So far, it's been the last few releases. That's always fun. Snake says, I'm kind of liking the second helmet design. It looks a lot lighter compared to the first one, which makes sense because archers would have to be constantly ready in their bows. Yeah, I agree. The whole function and utility of having armor for the archers is to protect them, sure, but it's got to facilitate mobility so that they can get in a position, be able to retreat if they're getting closed in on by melee forces. And so maybe we can scale this a little bit, make it a little less bulky looking, maybe more slick and streamlined. On the topic of the copyright stuff, Red Dragon says it's just YouTube being a-holes. Yeah, I know. It's just the automated system is what it is. It's an annoyance more than anything else, but still, it gets old dealing with that every single time I try and upload something. Thankfully, the music I used in Shaken, Stirred, and Chilled, which I'm calling that one SSAC, since it's Shaken, Stirred, and Chilled is the acronym. Calling it SSAC just because I don't want to say the name every time. The trailer music for that one didn't get claimed, thankfully. And one thing I'm looking at doing, I may have mentioned this, but I'll kind of reiterate it again here in case you folks don't remember. All of the music you see in the teasers for my projects they're fully fleshed out themes, going back to the very first couple that I did, but I've never released them at any point. They're just used in the trailers or the teasers, and that's it. I do plan on putting those into a release at some point. It'd be kind of like a little bonus thing in between everything else when I have enough of them, because they're all named after the albums. So like Neon Night Lounge's teaser music, that's what it's called, Neon Night Lounge. And so there's a whole bunch of them I've been sort of collecting that are used in the teasers that are going to go into a release at some point. I just don't know when yet. Yeah, like Snake pretty much just called what I was saying. I do plan on doing that at some point. It's just going to be called like teasers or something like that, and it's going to be a collection of a bunch of the themes that have been project teasers. So that's something down the road. It'll be something in between releases. I'm also working on some remix stuff, which has been very interesting. Remixes of existing project stuff. A lot of things on the horizon that I'm working on. Right now, my priority is finishing up all of the stuff in prep for SSAC next month, and then like we're doing here, it's going to be Halloween as the priority from now until like October. I still gotta get in touch with someone to do the cover art, which I should probably do this week and see if I can get someone who can do that for me. Thinking about hitting up Rye, who did last year's Halloween art. They did a good job, and it's a similar kind of vibe for like a Halloween type thing. So we'll see if they want to do it. Snake says, I kind of love the side of the helmet because it looks like a flap akin to like a leather helmet. I know it's probably made out of metal. That's where my brain went. You're talking about this part on the side here. It's definitely metal, but that kind of part that lays flat against the head, sort of flush on the sides, is probably something that would be in the overall shape. Again, Archer got to be light, streamlined, and so it's not going to be like big and blocky and heavy. It's going to be more sleek. But this particular design, I think I think you're right. I do like this one of all the ones we've come up with so far for an archer design. I'm going to put a note here. I might try and find a way to work in the idea that Red Dragon came up with the wings wrapped around the head. I might be able to repurpose that into something else. That could work as a potential mage type design too. Like maybe a holy mage or something like that. So all these designs could work in some capacity. I'll have to think a bit more when it comes to mapping out the full designs. There, this is my very crude bow and arrow. Snake says, I imagine the mages will probably have to be focused on their helmets, would have to have less eyes to focus on how to cast their spells. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be less so than like the archers, because like you said, being able to see all over the place for archers is pretty important. The idea I want to run with for the mages, and again, this is just one, doesn't mean there's just one mage type out of the 7, but this one is my favorite so far, even though it's easily the most annoying to draw. It's basically like a bunch of like ceremonial wrappings, kind of like you'd see in a mummy, but instead of it just being bandages or just cloth fabric, it's rune inscribed. That's what all these little lines and things are here. It'd be like drawn runes of this material that's wrapped all the way around the head, and then like a bunch of tassels kind of focus on like almost like a ponytail type thing. It's a really unusual design, but this one only has like 2 big eyes in the middle. These are all more decorative, like jewels or something that are kind of binding the fabric together. I'm gonna find a way to purpose this because it's one of my favorite designs, but it's not the only one, so we could definitely have more than one mage. This character right here that I'm pointing at strikes me as like a debilitating mage, so someone who would do like runic seals or things that inflict ailments on the enemy. So more of like a support debuffer instead of an offensive mage, offensive magic. So to that end, we might be able to repurpose something for like a light mage, someone who's actually casting like divine spells that do damage. Red Dragon says Top Right would be a good archer. This one right here. Yeah, I could see that. Very kind of sleek design. Kind of reminds me of a Dark Souls character again. It probably creeps into my subconscious more than I'd like to admit because it's one of my favorite games. Snake says, I actually kind of like it because it reminds me of how certain religions have those veils across the face, and the hairpiece of that helmet reminds me of that. Yeah, I could definitely see that too. If I was really ambitious, and I'm definitely not this ambitious, but for something like this one right here on the left of these top 2 with all the wrappings, doing something like making the wrappings somewhat transparent so that wrapped in enough layers you can't see beneath them, but the single strips that are coming off are almost slightly see-through, and you could see like the writing on them. I think I was telling Pwops when we were talking about it, if I was really, really ambitious, I would make the writing runes that are written on all these little things glow. And so it would look like they're lit up with spell or arcane energy all across like the body of the character. That would take a really, really long time. And I think I would go nuts when I got like halfway into trying to draw that effect. So that's probably not going to be a thing, but you know, if I had infinite time and resources, it was an idea I kicked around. All right. So I think we have a pretty good idea for an archer class. I'm pleased with how that turned out. So let me count them up. So we've got like melee, like basic melee type, heavy melee type, one type of caster debuffer like we were saying here, archer. That's 4. We need 7. Could do like airborne infantry, so that's 5. We need 2 more roles as far as soldier types to think about. I don't want to do mounted cavalry. I know I mentioned cavalry, but I actually meant infantry and just got my words mixed up. I don't think I want to do mounted cavalry because it doesn't really make sense for this particular type of faction. Thinking like Bayonetta, where you have the Centaur Angels, they're kind of like your mounted cavalry. I don't want to really go that route here. Snake asked, have you done scouts yet? Like recon, I have not. That's not something we really looked at. Some of the designs we saw on the first page, especially that one that Red Dragon pointed out, that really kind of sleek, almost triangular helmet looking one, that could definitely function like a scout. But let's take that idea and run with it here. So if we were going to adapt an idea in for a scout recon type of unit, what would that look like? I feel like kind of similar to the archer one, maybe more of a focus on eyes. Maybe not as many, but larger eyes, be able to see long distances. I got an idea. Let's see if we can do this without it being too goofy. We haven't done eye stalks. I do think, kind of like what Red Dragon's saying, armor-wise, this would have to be a lighter unit to be able to get to the front lines, get behind enemy lines, and get out and relay information, not necessarily combat-oriented. So to that end, I think we want to focus on kind of sleek lines, and not too bulky in sort of design. I think that's where we want to go with this, and we could probably iterate a couple times on that concept and see what we come up with. But I want to kind of run with the eye stock design because it's a little bit weird, but I think it's got potential. Hey, we have first time chat from KFC fan. What's up, KFC fan? Welcome to the stream. I will not assume you're just talking about Kentucky Fried Chicken, but if so, that's cool. Hope you're having a good evening on this Wednesday. What we are doing here is we are sketching out concepts for characters as part of one of my upcoming music releases, specifically Halloween. And what we're doing is coming up with ideas for units within an angelic kind of celestial faction. That's what we've been focusing on for the majority of the strip here. So feel free to hang out and vibe. And we will see what kind of ideas we come up with. Snake says, I feel like the eye stock design would probably work on a water unit. Yeah, what I was thinking, so hear me out here, all right? It's difficult to really see in static sketches like this, but I kind of foresee like these eye stalks retracting when this unit is on the move. So when they are getting en route to different spots in deployment, these would be retracted and just be right up against the head and be like right here, the way I'm kind of sketching it. But when the character needs to survey the area and see to get like, you know, a glimpse of enemy territory, enemy units or whatever, they would pop up the eye stalks to be able to see like antennae all the way around. And rather than have it be like always up and out and a vulnerable part of the character, they would be able to retract them in, kind of like the way snails and slugs do, and then pop them up in order to see, so that there's kind of two modes. And I don't know how I would be able to show that effectively in just a static image, but that from a concept perspective is what I was thinking. Red Dragon says you don't want to show the alien parts. Well, these would be parts of the anatomy, but not necessarily visible of the character underneath, if that makes sense. Because like for these right here on the Archer type design, these are all eyes that are visible. They're kind of like recessed or part of the helmet, but they're still visible. And so I think if we're going to make any concession about what parts of the anatomy would be visible, I think the eyes are going to be that exception, especially for a design like this with the Scout. So again, like the eyes would be out or in. And normally if they're in, they would look just like all these other ones. And so let me back one step up for KFC fans, since I know you're just jumping on and probably don't know what exactly we're talking about here. The Celestial faction and the premise of the upcoming album and for Halloween, and just to again explain what all this is for, as part of my content here, I make royalty-free background music tracks, which is actually what's playing in the background on my stream right now. You just can't see the track title because my track display thing is broken with Spotify, but I make BGM tracks that are free to use for streamers and content creators. They are instrumental tracks that I've created using my loop station and my synthesizer stuff. And every couple months or so, we have a new release of songs that comes out, and that's out there in the world, free to use for people who stream, make YouTube videos or whatnot. And so the release that we're talking about is for Halloween in October. And the whole premise of that release, let me go to, where is it? Down here. Is these two factions that are at war. We have a divine faction. Oh, whoop. Don't do that. Which I haven't named yet. We were talking earlier about how I have to come up with a name. But one faction is this kind of celestial, divine, angelic faction, which is what you see here with these concept sketches. And then the other faction is a more pagan, druidic group that is fighting. It's a war. This whole story of the album is a war. And what we're doing is drawing out character concepts for each faction to be part of the video when this project eventually comes out. And so this is an example of stuff we were sketching on previous sessions, and these ones at the bottom I came up with today. But we're basically kicking around ideas for character concepts for this particular faction. And then ultimately I'm going to have to pick the ones I want. I was telling the chat that we have 14 tracks. So 2 factions, 14 tracks. I need 7 characters by the end of this. Red Dragon asks, when they're in, I agree, but when they're out, wouldn't it show their skin? I think we're talking about the eye stalk thing again. I think the texture and coloring of the eye stalk would be very similar to whatever the material of the helmet is, so it would look like it's an extension of the helmet as opposed to like fleshy. So kind of more like, we're talking about antenna, right? But more almost like literal optical antenna is what I was thinking there. So again, if that's the only kind of concession is like the eye stalk and the eyes are the quote unquote physical anatomy of these characters you're seeing, that's fine. I think probably wouldn't want to go more than that. But let's... yeah, kind of like sub-telescopes. Let's keep adding in some details to the helmet here. I kind of default to things that look like this. I've done it several times already, so let's not do that. Let's go for a slightly different shape. Again, like Snake is saying, Scout type unit. Lightweight. So I'm thinking maybe even just like kind of like a rounded, following the shape of like a skull, but we have texture. so it's not just flat. Oh, cloth back. Oh, that's an interesting idea, Red Dragon. I don't think we've really done that. What we could do, I think I know how to adapt that. Let's see. So rather than have it be just like this, kind of securing the faceplate of the mask in place, we'd have straps that go wrapping around the head like this. And again, you can't see anything underneath, so it'd be some sort of material as part of whatever's underneath the helmet. Might have to see how we'd shore up this top part here, but I like the idea of like these straps kind of securing everything. It's a little tough to see because it's not colored, so maybe I should take off this texturing here to make it more clear. And one thing I was thinking to kind of go in line with that would be like, maybe we'd have runic or color patterns on the actual thing here, kind of mimicking camouflage. So this particular color palette, I think, would be very muted colors so that the scout type unit doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, you know? If all of the warrior types are wearing really kind of bright metallic armor, then this character would need to be very easily blendable, like blending in the surroundings. And so you could even have patterns similar to the way the camo functions, that's meant to blend into like woods or certain types of areas. And as far as the outfit goes, I'm thinking it'd probably be like really light fabric type gear, maybe with a couple small plates protecting here or there, but mostly light unarmored for maximum speed and mobility. Snake asked, do you have an information type unit? I'm not saying like radio, but akin to it. I mean, someone that can transmit information. Probably not, because we're not going the technology route here with this particular project. It's more like magical, like fantasy adjacent. So I imagine this particular scout unit would have the ability to kind of communicate and transmit things if necessary, or just be like the runner. You know, someone's got to get to the front lines, check out the enemy, and then get back. So that'd be a function of the scout, I think. Information gathering, surveillance, maybe even stealth. I think that's definitely got some legs to it. Let's do another one. Maybe we take the idea of how to gather surveillance and come up with something else that'd be like an alternate to like the eye stock thing we have here, which is a pretty unusual idea, admittedly. But let's see if we can come up with something else, keeping the idea of being able to see. So optics, sight is going to still be a part of the design. Snake says, I feel like the scout would probably be good for mapping out terrain. And Red Dragon says, or the scout, or the rock guys that could camo easily. Yeah, I think you could even use them in conjunction. You know, you have like a defensive line that you deploy with the heavy kind of rock-like shield units, and have them basically create bunkers that the scouts can fall back behind if they get caught, or if they end up drawing aggro. So like you have the defensive line basically lying in wait. The scouts can like draw attention of the opposing forces and lure them into like a trap using the heavier units, infantry, heavy defensive lines. So what if we took that idea of sight and vision, but instead of it being like on the top of the head, we put it on the front and not have like the eye stalks. It would just be more multiple eyes on the front. this would be 1, 2, probably 4, right? 2 along the center part of the helm and 1 on the side. And this is kind of like a camo pattern or like a decorative type of coloring for the surface of the mask. But taking that and maybe make it enclosed, kind of like we did on the other one. This one's a bit more of a simplistic design, but it would be function over just form. Doesn't need to be flashy. I imagine kind of like you'd see in like a rogue class or scout class, maybe a little hard to see here, but they'd have like a cape or cloak to help keep the weather out. Red Dragon says rocks could be the beacons and the scouts could be the runners, so the information can be faster during battle, like between the lines. Yeah, that's an interesting idea too. You kind of set up like a relay line of defensive encampments, and then basically the scout has to run from the beginning of the line to wherever they're going and then come back, and then the rest of the defensive line is kind of like your transmission type of thing. Definitely potential there too. Snake says the mask is kind of giving me Sam Fisher Solid Snake vibe. I think it's the eyes. Almost looks like a visor, like the night vision goggles, I'm assuming. Red Dragon says capes are more for breaking up body than the warmth of the soldier. Yeah, I could foresee for like a scout unit, if we're gonna give them a cloak, it would be like something that can help obscure them against terrain. So like if the character needs to blend in to avoid being caught, the patterning of the cape would let them like blend in with like a tree patterning or like a tree line or something, so that they can basically go stealth mode, right? As opposed to being defensive or anything like that. It'd be some sort of like visual tool for obscuring their presence. Yeah, like a ghillie suit. That's probably the better way to describe it. Heck, if you wanted to go like really wild and wacky with it, you could give the scout units wings and then have them use the wings as like an obscuring cloak. That would be kind of nutty. That might be a little bit more effort than I'm willing to put in for just a simple character design. But like, instead of white feathery angel wings, be more kind of like dark matte colored wings that double as a cape. But initially I was thinking kind of like the old animated series gargoyles, where when they're not flying around, they have their wings folded around them like a cloak. Maybe something similar. But then again, I don't want to get sued. Okay, I think this has potential. Not 100% sold on the second one. I feel like the first one with the eye stalks is an interesting idea, but I'm not exactly 100% sold on the concept so far. Snake says, I imagine if you're a scout, you're kind of expected to 50-50 chance of living and dying. Red Dragon says more like 80-20. I guess it would depend on how you're gearing your scouts. If you're purely using them for information, that's probably correct. But if you're setting them up kind of like a ninja class, where it's not just information, it's also infiltration, assassinations potentially, and whatnot, you give them actual offensive tools. That's sort of a different take on the class. As back in like ancient Japan days, shinobi were used not just for assassinations, but for also doing like reconnaissance, gathering information, getting behind enemy lines to, you know, take people out and like break defenses from the inside using stealth. It kind of depends on what you'd want in the unit, I think. I didn't think about that at all. I wanted to avoid falling into the standard tropes of like, oh, these are weird celestial angelic ninjas. Seems a little bit, it seems like a little bit overdone, but you know, we can take that idea and see what we do with it. Let's take this third one and say like, so not just scout, so like assassin, stealth assassin. What I was thinking initially was we take the idea of the imagery from like a traditional ninja mask and then make it weird and like otherworldly. Still trying to keep sleek lines in mind. Might have to change the shape a little bit. Might have drawn a common rider. Might be close. But I got some potential ideas I want to add in here, and we'll see how it fleshes out. I imagine the garb would be very kind of form-fitting and meant for, again, stealth and quick movement. This is sort of the break in the helmet where the eyes are coming from. And what I want to do here is something like this. Yeah, let's do 5 on this side. A lot of eyes, again, for visual surveillance and being able to see around. So it'd be like 10 eyes total since this is a side view. Thanks, Ass. I'm just throwing an idea out here. Have you done a minute? I'm assuming you meant like unit that has kind of like microscopic eyes where it rotates and zooms depending on the size. I don't think so for this one, but for this faction rather. One thing that could sort of go in line with that would be, not for this one I'm working on here, but if we had a helmet that has tracks, and so the eyes would be could move around on the tracks in order to see. What I mean by that would be, real quick, like if this is the helmet right here, and this is supposed to be like a track here. The eyes, it'd be like one here. It's a really rough approximation. I'm just going to delete this one in a sec anyway. But the eyes right here, but can move this direction or this direction. And there might be more than one that can kind of slide around to see. Kind of what you're talking about. Instead of zooming, it'd be more like they can slide in different positions to see. Had that idea too that I haven't really put into a design yet. but kind of similar idea, right? We could try and adapt that to another iteration on this sort of stealth scout assassin type of unit next. In fact, I think I'm gonna do that before I lose the idea completely. Because this particular design implies there's just a lot of eyes that can see in a lot of directions, but I think the idea of having less eyes but a lot more mobility is kind of a cool concept. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's go over here. Oh, I'm gonna make sure to save. I'm gonna need to go grab some water in a bit. Thanks to you folks spamming your redeems earlier, I'm almost out of hydration. But let's get this idea sort of on paper, in quotes, first. That was not an invitation to spam the hydrate redeem, you troublemakers. I can't even chug anything now. I gotta go get water first, and then I gotta chug it. Are you happy? All right, let me do that. I'll take the opportunity to go fry some chicken real quick too. Let me take a pause for a second here. I'm gonna go fill up my water bottle, and then I'll have to come back, and then empty my water bottle, and then have to fill my water bottle up again. So sit tight for a minute. I'll be back in 1 sec. All right, I am back. I have obtained more water and made room for more water. Let us continue. All right, so we want, this will be the last iteration for Scout. slash assassin slash stealth unit. And then I think we'll spend the rest of the time looking at Natural Order, the other faction that we haven't really talked about a ton on the stream tonight. And we'll do that for the remainder of our time. Red Dragon says, you're saying we could spam again? If you want to burn all your points on making my bladder suffer, I can't stop you. All right, I've got an idea for something, kind of developing the concept of having like the eyes be able to sort of move around in different tracks. Don't ask me like anatomically how that works. I'm gonna say probably like maybe really flexible eye positioning or something. I didn't think about, but for the sake of a concept, what I was thinking was we have the helmet design here. Let's go 2 eyes on one side. So one here and one here. And the eyes can move along this dark track here inside the mask. Either in this direction, or this direction. And they could slide around on kind of like these tracks to get into whatever position they need to be able to see. I think that's an interesting, kind of unique idea, and we can kind of build on that a little bit and see where it leads us. Steak says, what I meant to say, the helmet of the ninja unit kind of reminds me of the helmet of Reds from Super Sentai Abata Ranger. I don't know what that is, so I can look it up. See, Super Sentai Abata Ranger. I see. Yeah, I could see that a little bit. Like the way the visors and overall shape. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. I don't know. What would we do for the kind of back of the head here? We could make it more or less look like just wrappings all the way around. Again, try to keep it streamlined and light, so not too bulky, so that the unit would have actual mobility. And for the outfit, kind of more form-fitting type of wear. Not too committed to the idea of a cape or cloak yet. Maybe, maybe not. KFC fan says your design kind of looks like Stan's. Yeah, I think that's true. I could see that a bit. I'm a big fan of JoJo, so that it's not too surprising that the ideas and concepts would again creep into my subconscious. Get a little bit of like for some of these, especially the more kind of knight-looking armored ones, you get some Silver Chariot vibes, for sure. Red Dragon says Stan's never seen JoJo. You haven't? I guess we haven't really talked about it here. I know it comes up on Wazi's streams all the time. Just for the sake of explaining what we're talking about, Red Dragon, Stan's are, they're like a summon manifestation. They take a lot of different forms, but some are like actual humanoid characters that the different cast members can summon to do things. And they have a lot of really varied and interesting designs. The Stan design stuff in the JoJo series is really cool. Some of them look kind of like almost Kamen Rider-esque, like Snake has been talking about. Others take like radically different shapes or animals. It's a lot of range, but they all do different things. They have different abilities and powers. And that's a reoccurring thing across the vast majority of the JoJo parts. Not all of them. Like there are no stands in parts 1 and 2. I'm trying to think. Yeah, starting in 3 on, I believe. Yeah, got like personas. Very, very similar idea. And they're usually music references because Araki, the mangaka who does JoJo, really likes his music. And so there's a lot of references to like old 80s groups or songs and bands. If you like music and music references, you would absolutely get a kick out of reading JoJo. Still need to finish part 5. Snake says stands are kind of weird because they can do anything depending on the person. All of them are the same strength, or not even, or possibly not even stronger. Yeah, there's a huge amount of variety in like the JoJo world. Not only can the stands manifest in different ways, they can literally be an object. Well, one of them's like a communication tower. That's the stand. Is that weather report? And thanks for the follow, KFC fan. Welcome to the Space Bees. Hope you enjoy your stay. I read Dragon asks, is any like Eddie? Like Eddie from Iron Maiden? Or Eddie from Guilty Gear? I'm pretty sure the Guilty Gear reference is referencing Iron Maiden because Guilty Gear's all metal references pretty much. Yeah, if you're talking about the mascot Eddie from Iron Maiden, no, I can't think of any. I haven't watched all or read all the parts yet, but I don't think there's any that looks like Eddie. The kind of ghoul main character you see on all, like the Iron Maiden albums and everything. And I don't think so. Could be wrong because again, I haven't seen all the parts. I think Snake has consumed more JoJo than I have, but that's one I don't think I've seen yet. But there has to be an Iron Maiden reference in there somewhere. Yeah, like Snake saying, their characters name AC/DC or Metallica in JoJo. It's not always subtle. It's not always subtle. It's not just bands too. Sometimes it's songs. Like one of the major antagonist characters, his stand's name is Killer Queen and Sheer Heart Attack. 2 songs by band Queen. And one guy's name, yep, REO Speedwagon, best girl. Yeah, JoJo's a really interesting franchise. I love the style and then the creativeness behind it is what I really like. Just go finish. I'll start watching the rest of part 5 tonight. I was watching the episodes when I eat dinner, but whenever like I try and watch an anime or something, I got to be careful because if it's getting good, I'll sit there and watch like 5 of them, and then it'll be stupid o'clock in the morning, and I can't really afford to do that all the time. Snake says the guy with Killer Queen literally looks like David Bowie. Yep. lot of references. Red Dragon says, I'm watching Go Go Ranger. Oh yeah? I'm not super keyed into like the Sentai like Toku stuff, but Snake is, so I guarantee you'd have something to talk to Snake about. All right, let's zoom out and take stock of where we're at, and let's spend some time talking about the natural order stuff. Again, we haven't really looked at them at all this stream before we get ready to wrap up. I'm not quite at the end yet. Did see KFC fan says, and bites the dust. Yep. The main antagonist of part 4 is a lot of Queen references. I really like part 4. I go kind of back and forth about the order of the parts that I like, But right now, I think if someone were to pin me down on the spot and say, "What's your favorite JoJo parts in order?" I think it'd probably go 3, 4, 2, 1, and I haven't finished 5, so I can't rank it. I do like 5. I like the setting and style, but I can't really place it till I see the whole thing. Part 1 is good. I like Phantom Blood, but it's not one I feel the need to go back and watch. Part 2, which is Battle Tendency, right? Part 2 is awesome. It's a lot of fun. But Part 3 is kind of where like the whole stand thing really takes off, and it's basically like party of dudes, wacky adventures and hijinks for, was it 20 something episodes or however many? So Part 3 would be my favorite. That's not a really uncommon take. And then I really like Part 4. It's essentially like Persona 4 with crazy superpowers. All right, let me save this. Let's pull up the sheet for the natural order here. This is, so I'll talk a little bit about what we did on previous streams here to kind of explain. Forgive my terrible handwriting. I know I should be a doctor because my handwriting's so god awful. But while the angelic sort of celestial faction, again, it's more kind of divine, armored type of creatures. The natural order, like we talked about, is more druidic, and you'll see things like animal imagery and kind of more shamanistic design elements across the designs here. And probably the best example, I haven't figured out how I'm going to use this first one yet, but it's one of my favorites. Where we are. There we are. This first one in the upper left kind of looks like a dragon skull with some feathers. I really like the way that one looks, but I don't know what role that person serves yet, this character. But kind of like the other faction, they're more like helmets, I would say. Their outfits are kind of driven by like helmets. The natural order, it's more masks. I know it's kind of a fine distinction, but a lot of the headgear doesn't necessarily cover the entire head. Sometimes it's parts of the face, the top, or even the bottom, maybe in some cases we haven't gotten to. But you'll see more kind of nature-based imagery for these. Like this one right here in the second row, very bird-like. It is literally like a bird skull with feathers. But natural order also covers plants, and that's something I want to do some more experimenting with. Maybe not necessarily today, since again coming up on the end of our time, but like the mushroom character in the lower right, we have like a lot of plant-based imagery. That one we're kind of combining the idea of like a samurai type character and like a mushromancer, mycologist, mushromancer type of role. Haven't quite decided yet. We did sketch out a potential more detailed design for that one, but I do want to kick around some more ideas for the plant type of things. I don't think I want to go the route of like someone literally has like a flower head. I think that would be kind of weird and a little bit too out there. But the idea of the abilities, like this one here in the second row on the left, it would be like a tree mage, or like an arblemancer. I don't know what the name is in classes. Someone who can manipulate magic that controls nature and trees. Kind of like a druid, I guess. KFC fan says, I really like the woodpecker one. You talking about this one, the bird one in the second row? Yeah, that's another one I think has a lot of legs to it. Trying to figure out the role of that particular one. Maybe kind of a melee attacker based unit. The style of the helms and masks doesn't necessarily dictate what they do. It's really more just the ideas. But the concept of taking the imagery and fleshing out, okay, how would this particular unit behave in a combat scenario, because again, these are supposed to be like war times. Like this one up here, I'm a fan of this one up here because I like the horns. I think if you're looking at head on, it'd be kind of more like bull horns almost. It's difficult to tell from the side, but they're really big, sort of long sloping, almost like a steer, right? And I imagine that would be like a heavy melee unit or like a forward frontline melee unit. There is another page we could jump to. I started doing another set of concepts for this faction. It's not just the ones we see here. And I think it was, again, I had a call with Plups. This was a couple weeks ago before my PC died the first time. But we were talking for a while about ideas. And one thing Plups had suggested is incorporating more bug ideas, which I hadn't thought of. And that's kind of where these designs were sort of going. The idea of imagery from, again, it's probably fit in line with what Snake has seen in Kamen Rider and whatnot. But bug-like imagery. Insects like moths or beetles or other types of things, or arachnids like spiders, scorpions, stuff like that. Let me see if I can find it. We had this page, again, I think this was during that call, not on stream here, but we were messing around with some ideas for weaponry. And so, let's see, like up here, this shield design would be like a round buckler, medium-sized shield, but it has a spider wrapped around it, like a heavily armored spider that has like a carapace or a shell that can deflect things. But in addition to it being the imagery of a spider, it's literally a spider that's like Monster Hunter insect glaive kinsect style, is chilling here on the shield but can be deployed, like fighting someone and they're using the shield to deflect things, and all of a sudden spider jumps off the shield onto your face. I think would be a pretty terrifying ability to have. So that's what this is right here. And I think for a more heavily armored infantry or forward line melee unit, having like a bug themed series of gear, I think has some really cool ideas. So that's where this came from. Likewise, up here for like an archer class, this one over here in the top right is a bow, but it's designed like an octopus. So the tendrils and tentacles, I think there's a Monster Hunter design very similar to this one for folks like KFC fan who are somewhat new. One of my favorite video game series is Monster Hunter, so I stream it a lot here. I talk about it a lot here. You'll see it pop up in inspiration for design work a lot. I should probably not talk about Monster Hunter anymore, or we'll get way off track. But similar idea where, you know, you have an 8-pronged thing that projects from the middle, and then the strings of the bow go from like the middle to, and like that's the idea. So the natural order's weaponry and like this one right here, it's kind of like a Vorpal sword made of twisted vines and thorns. So more like a piercing, almost like a rapier type design, meant to like slash or pierce, but made of like vines, twisted vines and thorns. Red Dragon says, lies, he hates Monster Hunter. That is indeed a lie. That might be my most streamed game since I've been streaming it since I first started here on Twitch. But I do like the concept of taking things like a monster's design and creating weapons and armor out of it. So if we're going with themes here in the gear for this particular faction, more so than the Celestial one, you're going to see more ideas like that with the skulls and shells and everything else of creatures that have been purposed into gear. That's going to be like a major thing I want to focus on for the Natural Order. And at some point, maybe the next time, let's do this so I don't forget. Next time I do a drawing stream and we work on this project, which will probably be within the next couple weeks, let's focus on weaponry on both factions. I think I have a decent amount of ideas for the units, the characters. So let's dedicate the next stream to weaponry. I know Red Dragon was talking about ideas for weapons earlier, but I think it'd be cool to take this brainstorming session idea and say, okay, for the Celestial faction, again, Lovecraftian, biblically accurate angel gear. Let's come up with some ideas for what the different characters would use. And then likewise for the Natural Order, like I started doing here. You know, we need a spear type weapon. We need some more like swords or blades. Maybe like shorter dual blades type weapons. I was talking a little bit with Pups about doing like a character that has a scythe. I know scythes are kind of cliche, but they look so cool. So that's another thing between both factions, really. I think you could fit a scythe design on the angelic side. You could do it for the more druidic side too. Either or, not both. There's the idea of like catalyst weapons, staves for casting, like a staff design. You could definitely purpose a lot of the animal imagery for the Natural Order into that. Red Dragon says, I love weapon art. I could talk about weapons for hours. Yeah, I hear ya. I don't do it a ton, but this project is probably the most geared towards coming up with weapon concepts and whatever for what we're doing. And so we're going to need to talk about it a lot. So I think you'll probably get a lot out of that discussion whenever we sit down to look at that, Red Dragon. So keep your ideas stocked in mind next time we jump on stream to do this. I'm sure you'll have a lot to contribute for things. Like there's no bad ideas when it comes to any of this stuff. And you folks on stream here brought up a lot of really, really interesting things I can work with. This is not something I was talking about earlier, but when we first started, I did some more detailed character sketches this is for the angelic faction. 2 examples of like character archetype units. So we have a heavily armored kind of knight type unit on the left and a more caster based unit on the right. And these aren't ones that were part of just the sketches. This is designs we mapped out when we were actually just talking about the faction itself. And so I want to go through this exercise some more, either off stream or on stream. Haven't figured out that yet, but zeroing in on what we're going to be doing for the actual characters for the project. You know, we've done a lot of brainstorming. I think after the weapon discussion, it'll be time to actually start dialing in and getting concepts, because October will be here soon. And I would like to have most of these done by September. Either in this format or in pixel format, but either way, have the designs ready. So that will be the goal when we eventually get there. I do like the mage here. Between the design, the outfit design's alright, but the spell casting animation with this like, you know, YMCA pose and the halo, I think looks kind of cool. I do think I want to have the halo design on all of the units. That's something I think I'll probably maintain and then change like the shape for each one, because again, like angelic type faction, not literal angels, but that's part of their theming. So like adapting a halo design for each one, I think I wanted to stick with that. Dragon says I like the one on the left. Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool design. I probably would want to flesh out the helmet design a little bit more. It's very simple just for the sake of illustrating like an idea. But kind of that type of style and vibe for the armored units. I definitely think we can go somewhere with that. And so overall, I think this session was productive. Between coming up with a lot of designs, we'll jump back to the main page for the Celestial faction here. Where were you? I should label my layers. We kicked around some ideas for unit-specific builds. Let's go for this one first. And I think between all these ideas, I could pick out 7 to either adapt or lift straight from the concept sheets here and start working on actually sketching out full body concepts. I think this particular one with all the wrappings, I'd want to use and then maybe adapt that one we saw with the arms raised YMCA pose for this particular type of character. And then that would be the concept there. And so more to come. I don't know if we're going to be working on this project on the next design stream or drawing stream, but we will be returning in the future, and when we do, it'll be weapons. I do want to get back to the Monster Hunter fusions. It's been a while, and I have to return to that. I couldn't use my tablet while my PC was down, so that's why a lot of my stuff has been kind of in limbo for a bit. But I do want to get back to a lot of stuff because there's a lot to do. So to that end, let me see who is online that we can raid. And we can go and spread the chill vibes elsewhere. Let's see. Is anybody I know online? Not a lot of people are online this Wednesday evening. So let me see if we can find a VTuber that is doing art. Maybe someone who does not have a lot of stream viewers. Let me check real quick. Let's see, there's some here. I think a lot of people on the art side are gearing up for Art Fight, which I believe is this month in July. It's not something I've ever done, but I know Pwups and Wazzy do Art Fight every year. So I think a lot of people are getting ready to do that. But I see this person is doing art. I've never seen them before. Spectral Noct. Their stuff looks cool. Well, we can go head over there and see what's going on. So let me cue this up. We'll go to outro. Meet you. And we will get ready to head over to this other stream. So like I mentioned before earlier on, we will be back this weekend on Saturday. Red Dragon, I know you're still here. Noon Saturday is the next installment of the Elden Ring collab. We should be good to go to finally pick up where we left off. And I'll make sure I have the mod that we use, and I'll have the DLC before Saturday. So we will pick up then. So if you want to see 2 people struggle through a difficult game and get absolutely murked, then feel free to drop by for more Elden Ring. So, in the meantime, have a good rest of your evening, everyone. Let's go see what this particular artist is drawing. And I'll catch you in the next one.